Shut the fuck up, Electronic Arts. Seriously, for realsies on this one, shut your stinking shit-stained lips. Many of you will have heard about this one by now, but if you have not, allow me to present to you Electronic Arts at its mind-blowingly tasteless worst. EA is now trying to rebrand loot boxes. It's trying to sidestep all of the controversy, all of the community backlash, all of the negative social, political, legal, financial implications, not by addressing the issue, not by removing them, not by trying to fix them, not by considering the ethical concerns surrounding them at all, but instead by simply renaming them. After all, you can't criticise an EA game for having loot boxes if they're not called loot boxes, you transparent fuckers! So instead of calling them loot boxes, EA has now decided to call the gambling systems in their games surprise mechanics! Assuring the UK Parliament's Digital Culture, Media and Sport Committee that it's all quite ethical, all above board and people love them. This complete friggin' drivel was provided by Kerry Hopkins, VP of Legal and Government Affairs at EA, who made the intellectually insulting claims at an oral evidence session recently. Normally when I read some nonsense from a corporate mouthpiece, I'll do it in a funny voice, but I don't have to this time. I've got all this complete shit straight from the weevil's mouth. Here's a clip of what was said. And bear in mind, the very first sentence coming out of Kerry's mouth is a lie.
Can I ask you, both companies, do you consider loot boxes to be an ethical feature of your games? Kerry?
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply
yeah,
to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics, but I think it's important to look at this. So if you go to a I don't know what your version of Target is, but a store that sells a lot of toys, and you do a search for surprise toys, what you'll find is that this is something people enjoy. They enjoy surprises, and so it's something that's been part of toys for years, whether it's Kinder Eggs or Hatchimals or LOL Surprise. We do think the way that we have implemented these kind of mechanics, and FIFA, of course, is our big one, our FIFA Ultimate Team and our packs, is actually quite ethical and quite fun, enjoyable to people.
Alright, first things first, I mentioned that the initial sentence Kerry said was a lie. Of course it is. Electronic Arts does call them loot boxes. She claims that they don't like to call them loot boxes. Oh, we don't call them loot boxes. Well, what was the term that was used when Electronic Arts tried to get itself some easy praise for not having loot boxes in Jedi Fallen Order? Oh, that's right. They said loot boxes. And they did this specifically for good press because people were angry about the loot boxes in Star Wars Battlefront 2. If EA insistently calls them surprise mechanics, why didn't they say there would be no surprise mechanics in Jedi Fallen Order? Unless what Electronic Arts is trying to pull here is to claim that when they are bad, they're called loot boxes, but when they're good, i.e. when EA does them, they're not loot boxes. And if that's the case, maybe there will be loot boxes in Jedi Fallen Order. They'll just call them surprise mechanics instead. How the fuck are we to know? Electronic Arts, what's the difference between a loot box and a surprise mechanic? Which, by the way, I'm gonna run into the ground. I'm gonna go out of my way to turn surprise mechanics into a fucking joke. Although, that's well on its way. Pretty much everyone so far talking about this has seen right through what EA's tried to do, the utter absurdity of what they're trying to pull here, and the utter blatancy of it. We call them surprise mechanics. I mean, Jesus Christ, you can call something a different name all day long. It doesn't change what it is. It's like when Bethesda said that their paid mods weren't paid mods because they were calling them something else, because they decided they were mini DLCs. That's not actually... EA, you don't get to fucking redefine loot boxes. You don't get to rebrand them, you don't get to reposition them, they are what they fucking are. You don't get to implement nasty, predatory, insidious little game mechanics designed to psychologically pummel money out of people, and then when the brand gets too toxic, because of the toxic things you did with it, change the name to avoid the flack. You were warned that if you kept pushing the envelope with loot boxes, shit like this would happen, that you would end up at fucking committee hearings trying to validate the awful things you're doing. And you fucking cowards who were fine using the term loot boxes before it all got a bit too hot. You were fine with it. You cowards can't even stick by what you were doing. You were fine calling them loot boxes. Now it's become too dirty a word for you. And rather than try and change the actual practices that made it a dirty word, you just want to change the word so you can keep doing dirty deeds. That right there is Electronic Arts flagrantly showcasing its contempt for the general public. Electronic Arts genuinely thinks you are stupid. All of you. It wouldn't be hitting out with this total tosh if it didn't. It genuinely thinks if it just changes the name, we won't be wise to what's going on. Or at the very least, it'll trick the politicians that are currently very interested in gambling mechanics. EA, we're not gonna forget what you did with Star Wars Battlefront 2 just because you changed the name of the gambling mechanics. You absolute shitwits. This is no different from what the game industry has tried to do overall with microtransactions. You'll note that not many publishers call them microtransactions anymore. It all falls under the umbrella of recurrent user spending. It's such a transparent thing they do. Their own bad behaviour makes a word unpleasant, associates it with unpleasant behaviour because the behaviour associated with the word is unpleasant, and just like we saw with EA here, they're not interested in changing that behaviour, just in trying to improve the optics of it with a bit of a name change. It's pathetic, it's spineless, it's disgusting, and it's degrading to the general public because, again, it communicates the idea that they think you're bloody thick. Hopkins also repeated EA's usual bollocks in trying to compare loot boxes to physical products that have obscured content, contrasting them with Hatchimals, Kinder Eggs, and whatever the hell an LOL surprise is meant to be. Now, this is blatant false equivalence. This is something EA does constantly. It ignores the fact that, you know, a fucking Kinder Egg isn't attached to a $60 product, and you can't buy more little toys inside the Kinder Egg if you spend incrementally tiny amounts of money that are designed in such a way to creep up on unsuspecting customers who have been encouraged by various gameplay mechanics to impulse spend. That alone creates a world of difference between loot boxes inside of a video game and a one-off blind box purchase. But even so, I gotta speak as someone who used to buy those blind box figures that you can find in bookstores and nerdy shops and all that. I used to buy those. Not anymore. Once the loot boxes rose to prominence, it got me to re-examine all of that kind of stuff. And no, I don't think I want to buy little boxes on the hope that I get an alien warrior and instead get a fucker from Tron. And what EA is risking here is potentially dragging down other industries with it, with these fucking false equivalences. Yes, there's a chance that EA could hoodwink enough people into thinking, oh well, Panini sticker albums are okay, I guess loot boxes are okay. But they could also get people to think, loot boxes are shitty, they're comparing them to Panini sticker albums, oh wait, the stickers are shitty as well. And if I worked for Panini, if I made Hatchimals, if I made whatever the hell LOL surprise is, if I were the Kinder Eggs bloke, I sure as shit wouldn't want my name dragged into this, dragged through the mud by Electronic Arts as they try and come out smelling of roses themselves. And then there's the rest of it. We disagree that there's evidence that shows it leads to gambling. You can't disagree with the evidence. It's evidence. It's what's there. Instead, we think it's like many other products that people enjoy in a healthy way and like the element of surprise. What about the people who don't engage in loot boxes in a healthy way? What about people with shopping addiction issues and problem gambling issues that you routinely exploit to make money? And stop pretending you don't, you lying sacks of garbage. What about people who do have gambling issues and decide to use video games to cope with that, you know, to try and help deal with those issues? It's something to distract them, a new hobby, something to get into, and then they find that the gambling has started to come into their games, because that is the story a fan of mine told me about his brother, where they would try and bond over games like Call of Duty to get over the brother's gambling issues, and then loot boxes came to Call of Duty and fucking ruined it for them. That's just one of many stories about how microtransactions and loot boxes, not just loot boxes, it's microtransactions microtransactions and loot boxes. It's just one of many stories, and I've got a few stories of my own, which I'll be talking about in future videos, because the effect of these fucking incremental purchases, of this recurrent user spending, is very real. There's a very real human cost that comes with exploiting the vulnerable. And EA can pretend it's not happening, it can reposition and rebrand as many fucking times as it likes, but it's there, and a fucking reckoning is due. Electronic Arts, you are truly fucking scum. And I know that this is going to come across to some as just another outragey video, but I genuinely mean it. It's not just hyperbole coming from me. I am so fucking sick of the outward contempt displayed by these companies. You can't just say loot boxes are actually quite ethical and have them be ethical. You can't just call them surprise mechanics and have them not be loot boxes. EA, you do not get to worm your way out of it this easily. I realise you're finding yourself on the defensive here and you don't like it. The game industry famously hates having any sense of accountability or responsibility for its own problems, but this is a problem you made for yourself. People like me warned you about it for years. I warned you for years what was going to happen if you kept pushing the envelope with gambling mechanics, and here you are. And now you're trying to scurry away like a fucking cockroach under the light. Now, after years of saying loot boxes are just fine and dandy, you don't even have the fucking backbone to call them loot boxes anymore. At least not when asked about them by a politician. You fucking worms. You worms writhing in the goddamn dirt. It isn't recurrent user spending, it's microtransactions. It isn't surprise mechanics, it's loot boxes. Own up to your own shit. For years, Electronic Arts shrugged all this off. The game industry at large shrugged all this off. Oh, loot boxes are fine. People are just being alarmist about it. It's not a real issue. And here we are. We're actually seeing it be a real socio-political issue, and they can't run away fucking fast enough. They still want to do it all, but they're terrified of the label they themselves created, perpetuated, and popularized. The so-called AAA industry is bloody disgusting.